Okay, so let's go ahead and take Javier from he, him, who's calling from Mexico. Wants to ask, what does it mean to be trans, curious, and wants to learn? Javier, welcome to the line. How's it going?
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Doing pretty okay. I'm calming down somewhat from the
Yeah,
Matthew call.
before we get angsty again a
Yeah,
little
for
bit.
sure. All
Hey,
right.
so I just have a few quick questions for you guys.
Sure.
Because this trans stuff is like new to everyone.
Sure.
Um, how do I put? I'm also an atheist, and like if a person tells me, "Hey, you have to respect me and believe in my God and say Jesus' name," I'm gonna say no.
Hmm.
And I found that I don't know why, but trans people just want me to follow along with them, but I
Well,
just can't
Sure.
Javier,
be myself.
there's a difference here though, because being trans isn't a religion. We're not asking you to believe in something imaginary. We are it we we're part of a kind of complex societal situation where for a long time your identity was associated with your your body and your organs, because society has a way of classifying people in hierarchies and giving you jobs and roles based on that hierarchy. And so when people thought that these were things that were connected, that men were uh, big, strong fighters and women weren't, and women had to stay home and cook and take care of children, um, they had an often religious belief that it was God's will that they were created with their body to do that specific job. And so a big thing. Um, and over time, society developed that, like, the way of interacting with people based on those biological features. And we know those as gender roles, but we also know it as the big concept of gender, including masculinity, femininity, etc. All of that it's real. It's not imaginary. But when we say social construct, that's kind of what we refer to is this hierarchical structure of how our bodies have been kind of assigned to a particular role and a particular, like, place in society. Um, and we've learned that humans don't all fit those rules very neatly. Um, and many of us have said, my body and the way that I fit into the society don't fit together. And the problem is, though, we have a society that continues to work in that way that is very outdated. And so in order to kind of reconcile those pieces, that mismatch, you end up having a group of people that will identify as trans because they are living as a gender in this mess of societal hierarchy, etc., in a body that is supposed to align with that. Does that kind of make sense?
No,
Not at all.
to be honest, no.
What doesn't make sense? I know I
What?
kind of
Well,
went down a sociological rabbit hole.
mhm. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's let's simplify this. Let's simplify this.
Yep.
Then I am assuming you are a transgender man, meaning that you were born a woman or a
I
female
mean, I was
at
born a baby,
birth,
but yeah.
Yeah.
a
um,
female, right? And it wasn't assigned. It was like the
no,
doctor
it
didn't
was
just
it
make
was
it
a
up
sign.
out
It
of
was
somewhere.
No, it was absolutely assigned. Yeah. I don't know my DNA. I don't know the exact hormone balance I have. I don't There's a lot of things about my body I don't know. All I know is that I was born with certain genitalia that they said, "Yep, that's a girl." That's all I know.
Yes, that's how we
And I'm sure
classify
that
animals too.
yeah, and do you know that it's not always correct though? That doesn't always line up. even
Yeah,
physically
no,
for
no, no, no.
people.
I mean, I understand that, like, there's
Yeah.
because I've seen cases where, like, I guess they had a micro penis and then confused it with a vajayjay. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen those oddities. Yes, of
Yeah, so
course,
there are people
but
that
that's
don't
not
fit,
what
but
I'm
here's the
talking about.
problem though, Javier. Here's the problem though. Like I said, there are different societal rules that people have been told they're supposed to do because of their genitals. Like this is what situation you're in. You're born and they say you have these body parts, that's a girl. Now you have to use these pronouns in society. You have to have this hairstyle, these clothes. You have to have this type of name. All of those things, they connect to your
That isn't
body
true,
parts that
though.
you had absolutely no control over and don't really even necessarily relate to any of those traits, right? Like it's just odd that we feel that your body still has to dictate the type of person you are, right?
But it does.
But we
How's so?
objectively know
That's
that
why
it
we have
doesn't.
laws. Let me explain.
How
Let me
does it
explain.
do that?
This
Yeah,
is why we
explain to
have,
me.
let's say, women's protection laws, right? Because obviously men are generally, not always, generally more stronger. That I mean, what is the
Javier,
law?
Javier, what about men makes them stronger?
How we're born, testosterone, are nuts. Like, have you like you
Right.
say
So
you are
what is
a man? I am assuming, right? Let
testosterone?
me ask you a question.
Right. So hold on,
I know.
Javier. Javier, no, I'm asking the questions. Because again,
Okay.
there's another thing I don't know if you understand. I'm a physician. I know the
Mhm.
biology very, very well. Um, the
Yes,
things
but argument
that
from
make
authority isn't
no,
valid.
Javier, I'm not making an argument based on authority. I'm giving you a lesson here. I'm teaching you. I'm trying to teach you, and I need to listen. Um, so I'm asking these questions intentionally because the conglomeration of traits that people associate with masculinity, i.e., what you mentioned, being stronger, you're correct that the primary factor there is testosterone. However, everybody has testosterone to different degrees, and so that even is a spectrum. We have a lot of cis women who are often accused of being trans because they have masculine levels of testosterone. So if you boil everything down to certain biological components, it's oftentimes that they don't really agree, and it's oftentimes things that both sexes have, and can have to varying degrees. So when you say that that it like the biology like and gender identity do relate, like there are even the examples you're giving me are not consistent across the board
No, there's
for all
feminine
men.
men. No, there's feminine
Right.
men,
Yeah.
but there's still men.
Right. What makes them a man?
Male. Uh, we all know that question. But
No,
I mean,
nope.
I
I
think
want you
what
to
you
give me.
don't recognize, Javier, is that
well,
that's an
here,
ideological
let me
position.
explain it this way. Let me explain it this way.
Are you here to learn or are you here to explain to us?
No, I'm giving you my perspective because you're giving me yours, and
Right.
I really don't understand it. But then
Okay.
here's where the religion part starts. If you don't affirm what I am thinking that I know it is wrong, well, then you're the bad person. But then
Javier,
here's where I'm
Javier.
not against
Okay, well, I'm gonna flip
LGBT,
this on
but
you.
then you
Javier, I'm gonna
push.
flip this on you. I'm gonna flip this on you real quick. 1 second. So I'm assuming that your name is Javier, right? Is that your name? You're telling me that's your name.
Correct, correct.
Okay, so if you told me my name is Javier and I said no, actually, I think your name is Dennis, and I kept
Going to
saying,
be
I
incorrect.
kept calling you Dennis. Well, right, it's incorrect, right? And would I be rude to keep calling you Dennis, even though you've told me over and over again your name is not Dennis and you don't like to be called Dennis?
Well, it's irrelevant to me, to a person that doesn't care what other people think. It's really irrelevant.
Your answer the question though. Like I think you're
I
dodging
did
this
though.
here
I
because
wouldn't
it
get
makes a
mad.
point.
No, I wouldn't care.
But do you think that the fact if I even let's say if I called you a girl's name or if I said actually I think you should be called Christina. And I just kept calling you Christina. Yeah. Oh, we got
Yeah,
Dennis Christina here on the screen. Like, it's not
there's a
necessarily
lot
the
of
word
delusional
that I use,
people,
but the
and I
is
can't control
no,
it.
Dennis.
Oh, he's just
The
coming out with the
fact that
delusional.
yeah, so
Well, I
the
mean, you're
fact
telling
that
me
I
something that I know not to be true. That
right.
is delusion.
So that's the thing though. That's a name that you use is something that is very subjective to you. Unless you decided to show me your birth certificate, I don't really have objective proof that your name isn't Dennis. So I don't see any reason to go along with your belief that your name isn't Dennis.
Okay, well, I mean, but you're making two different claims: a name that can be changed, even legally, whatnot, and then how you're born.
Right.
Like, how would
But
I
here's
know?
something
Like,
else,
you're telling me you're a trans woman.
Dennis,
Hold
and
on,
I'm going to keep
let
calling
me
you
explain it.
Dennis. Um,
Okay, ma'am,
Javier, no,
let me
let me
just
explain
explain it.
because that actually leads into something else here too. Because you can change your biology. In fact, like I think all of us were born as babies. Like I said earlier, we're born as babies. You're not a baby anymore, are you? Should we treat you the exact way that you were treated when you were born?
That would be ridiculous, but I mean,
Right, exactly. People change over time.
but you go from a boy to a man, and then a girl to a woman,
No, not
not a
always though.
boy to a
Not always
woman.
though. Not
What
always
does that
though.
mean?
Examples of androgen insensitivity syndrome where people have uh, they're not responsive to testosterone as children. They develop female anatomy until puberty, where it develops as male anatomy.
But you're
And so you
conflating two
have
different
people
issues, though.
there. It's not two different issues, though. My whole point
It
here
is.
is that people change over time. And that is one way physically that people change over time. It's very similar for trans people who change, uh, like in their
Into what?
outward presenting like gender expression over time, or they change their bodies over time. It's the same if you will allow somebody who is intersex to have that physical change over time, but you won't allow that for a trans person. You are the one that's inconsistent
But
because
being
they're both
trans
just
is a
physical
choice.
changes over
Being
time.
intersex, you were born that way.
Being trans is not a choice, to be clear. I don't so I wanna
Doing
just jump in
everything
really
is a
quick.
choice.
I mean, be
The
no, not really.
career, the person you sleep with, everything in your life, you have 100% control over.
Uh, okay, that's an interesting position. Sure, like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have a decision to make when like you either choose to transition or not. I guess you choose to tell people that you're trans or not, but being trans is something that happens to you. Like it's an experience that you have and many of us at least initially have a resistance to it and we go, "Oh my god, but maybe I can actually just be a feminine man and I'll just be able to do that and I'll be okay." And then the feelings continue to exist because that's an experience that is just like it's a thing that's happening to us in the same way that if you grow up gay, like that's not something that you have control over. Of course, you have control over whether you date men or women, but, like, the thing that is happening internally, you don't have a choice about that. You can just choose how to proceed going forward. So, this is something that I think folks don't understand about being trans is that, like, most people would not choose to go through this unless they felt compelled in some way, and a lot of the time, we describe that compulsion as gender dysphoria. Like there's a dissonance between how you were born versus how you internally feel you should be. And some people can describe this as like a brain body map distinction, where some people will even describe symptoms of phantom limb.
What do you mean
Um,
brain body mass? Can you clarify that one?
So the brain body map is basically that like you are born with an idea of what your body should be like. Like you have two arms and two legs. And that comes with a sense of like proprioception where you kind of have a sensation that like you have these limbs, right? And if you're born without one, or if you lose one through an accident or something, there's like this phantom limb sensation because your brain is like biologically wired to have these expectations for what the rest of your body looks like. So, um, that's kind of like one of the ways that people explain being trans is that we have a brain body map like misalignment where, and like there are some trans men I've seen who've basically been like, I strongly feel that I should have a penis between my legs. And the fact that I don't causes dissonance and friction for me internally. It means that I can't have sex in the way that I imagine having sex. It means that I can't pee the way that I imagine I should be able to pee because my brain expects me to have this organ and it doesn't, which is why I typically say that like being trans is like a neuroscientific, neuropsychological phenomenon, like, it has something to do with the biology of the brain, even though we would not be able to pinpoint the part of your brain that makes you trans, you know? Like, it's a complex experience that is like it's an extant result of consciousness in the same way that consciousness itself is an extant result of just having a brain that's complicated as
I
our
think
brains
you
are.
double talk though. I think you
How
double talk
so?
because if you said that there's something in the brain, but then that we can't pinpoint it, you can't say it's something in the brain because we can't pinpoint it.
That's not true.
Well,
That's
do you
not true, Dennis, because things are multifactorial and have multiple, and even if sorry, Alexa, I didn't mean
no,
to
feel free.
jump in here.
It's
But
fine.
but like but like even if
If
you
you're
can't
telling me
point
that
to
there's
one
brain scans,
exact, you have a severe misunderstanding of what brain scans even do. Um but there's a lot that
well,
goes
no,
on
I'm
in a
just
brain
going based on what you're telling me
that you
though.
cannot. No, no, you're misunderstanding. There are things that happen in a physical structure of a brain that we cannot visualize, for one. There are things that don't relate to one specific receptor. There are things that relate to multiple different things interacting with each other. And even if you tried to pinpoint one factor that would cause the whole thing to change, we don't have that because it's a multifactorial system. Because if
But it,
one thing
but then it
plus
couldn't
another
be in the
thing
brain
could lead
and
to a different
then
result.
be a social construct at the same time because you're saying it's biological that it's something in the brain
No,
or
it's
it's a social
both.
construct. It can't be
It's
both.
both.
It is,
It
yeah.
no, it can
In the
be.
same
It
way
can
that
be
sexual
No, because
because
if it
orientation
was
is both.
biological, it would be detectable. If it's social, and what you're
Give me a second,
we're not
Javier,
saying it's
to
not.
explain
Yeah,
this. When it
yeah.
comes to social traits, like, okay, so basically we start from like a thing that is happening biology. Let's just take sexual orientation as an example. So, sexual orientation is something that people don't seem to have control over. It's something that's happening in the brain. Um, and then we create these like social constructs around it. You know, in like ancient Rome, men would have sex with
incorrect.
men, but they did not have a construct called homosexuality. They did not call them gay. In fact, I think that their social dynamic was basically, are you a top or a bottom? And being a bottom was like the undesirable trait because you're, I guess, associated with women in that instance. But so for like basically these feelings exist independent of the social construct, and then we build a social construct around it as a way of categorizing and explaining that behavior. And because that's what humans do, we tend to categorize things and associate similar traits with one another. So, like, I don't know what your sexual orientation is or what your favorite ice cream flavor is. I don't think that you would expect to see one particular part of your brain that says, I'm attracted to men or women. And you can't find one part of the brain that says, I prefer vanilla over chocolate. You also cannot find one part of the brain because this is all happening in the prefrontal cortex. Like it's kind of happening all across the electrons happening in the front of your brain here. And we are not capable of pinpointing like, "Oh, you like trucks. That's right here." Or, "You like makeup, and that's over here on the other side." So, yes, something can exist
But
in the
what is
brain.
liking trucks? I'm a male. Let's say I like makeup. That wouldn't
Okay.
make me a woman.
Sure, that's
We're
not the
not saying that
conversation
it.
that we're having.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry, this happens a lot where we end up jumping around
yeah.
with callers, but I wanna try to keep things on track here. We are talking about a phenomenon in the brain that influences human behavior, just like being attracted to men or women is a feeling that you have in your brain. and that sends out tingles to your genitals, and then you behave by either acting on those impulses or not, right? We don't have control over it, and we've built these ideas of bisexual and heterosexual and homosexual. Does that kind of make sense?
No.
Okay, I don't really understand where you're not understanding that
Well,
very
because
basic premise.
you can. I'll give you an example. Like when I was little, I used to. You guys remember Thundercats? I used to have a crush on Lionel. You guys remember who that is? And then when I got older, it was like, well, it was more that I wanted to be like him. But then I realized, like those feelings as a kid, when I was confused and everything, were incorrect feelings. So it is up to us to mature and teach ourselves what our purpose in life is. Give us a purpose in life and go from there.
What is the
So
point of that?
But it has nothing to
yeah,
do.
so
Like
Dennis,
I could have,
so
I could have
you
gone
changed
gay.
over time. You thought one thing about yourself previously. You found out that that wasn't the case, and you think differently about
Correct.
yourself now. That does not prove your point at all. That actually is more in our favor of that you could believe something about
No,
yourself earlier, and then that can
that's
change over
incorrect. Yes,
time because you're a dynamic human
correct.
being.
Kids have a big
Right,
imagination.
yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
No,
And
no, it's
so
not
this is when
imagination.
grown-ups
It's no,
need to come in.
it's not. I'm very confused where you're going with this.
I know you are.
I'm
Oh,
really
fuck
Okay,
confused
you,
as to
Dennis. Waste of time, motherfucker. You're. Ugh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just. Y'all are
Why'd you
so
feel that way?
irritating.
so I'm a little bit confused as to what the premise of our conversation is, Javier, because you called in asking what does it
Well,
mean to be trans? You stated that you're curious and wanting to learn, or at least that's what you told our
no,
call
no, I didn't
screener.
state that. No, she
Okay,
asked me, and I was like, well, I want to understand from your words because here's one thing that you
sure.
feel
Well,
one
here's
way,
my
and
problem.
that
Here's my
uh,
problem is that you're here asking us questions as though you're trying to understand our position, and then you're arguing against our position instead of being like, okay, well, here's how I process what you just said. Basically, every example that we've given you in an attempt to help you understand, you've just said, no, that doesn't make sense. And then you've gone off on a separate example that has nothing to do with what I just said or what Ben just said. So this conversation feels
yeah.
very
it's
confrontational. And I don't know if you
no,
intended to
well,
come
it's
across
kind
that
of like
way.
a mechanic. No, no, let me clarify it just so you understand. It's kind of like a mechanic, like a professional mechanic in my diesel engine, and that make it run faster, even though I know for a fact that it's harmful for my car.
So you think you know better than everybody else is what I'm getting. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Better than who?
Every
Well, I mean, if
medical
you're telling me that
organization in the
you are a
United
man,
States. Yeah.
well, I'll, let me give you another example. How do I that if me and you, Ben, have sex, there's a possibility of us having kids, even though you're a man?
What the fuck? Uh Absolutely I will not entertain that question. Do not make any comments like that again, please. Um
How would I know that?
I'm very upset with this conversation because like literally you're coming in saying that essentially trans is a religion and we're trying to force our beliefs on you. And we've basically our position is
You
like,
are.
hey, we're trans. This is how you can respect us by using the name that we ask you to use, by using the pronouns we ask you to use. You don't have to understand what it means to be trans, but we just want to coexist as human beings on the same planet that we have to inhabit together. And what I keep hearing from your examples and from your arguments is that you don't care. You don't care whether things respect us or not. And with positions that we keep trying to explain the science behind this, you just say, "Well, but
That's why
I
I
just
gave
know
you.
better. I'm going to stick with my same position." When we have mountains and mountains of data, we have multiple medical organizations that are all in agreement, which they don't ever agree on things. This is one of the few things that you have multiple specialty boards of medicine agreeing on. It's information that maybe is a bit over your head, and you're trying to like your arguments almost sound similar to like an anti-vax position. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but do you think that people like do you think that um people who know nothing about a particular subject should just do their own thing and ignore everybody else that
Well,
studies the
if
subject matter, that
tomorrow
comes up
the
with regulations
major
on the
medic
subject matter?
let me give you another example. Once again, yes, I do believe that if
Okay.
tomorrow all the mechanics in the world say gas is good for your water is good for your gasoline car, we should discard that evidence. It doesn't matter who says it.
I think that you're
So, but here's the
fundamentally
difference, though.
misunderstanding the concept of appeal to authority versus like an explanation from expertise. It's not like it's like
Yes.
if mechanics had done rigorous testing to determine that diesel was fine in a gasoline engine and in fact improved the quality of
But it
function for
isn't.
that machine, yes. But
But it isn't.
when the major
Shut
medical
up.
organizations, yeah, the interruptions and stuff are pretty annoying. Um, we are saying not that all major medical organizations have decided to rally around an ideological position. It's that we have done rigorous testing. We have spent decades, longer than either you or I have been alive, studying this issue, and we have concluded that being trans is a legitimate psychological experience similar to sexual orientation. Um, and sexual orientation, as you may know, used to be in the DSM as a diagnosis of aberrant behavior, and we've removed it. And we're kind of working that same way toward being trans because it seems through the very rigorous study we've done that this is just a way that brains work sometimes. And we have this like social construct that is emergent. Like trans people have existed since forever, but calling it trans is kind of new. We've created this social idea around it. So like this is what I'm trying to say is that we're not trying to appeal to authority. We're saying we've treated this like it's a delusion. We've treated it like it's psychosis. We've tried to get people to just tolerate being female who are masculine, like or like feminine men or whatever. And it just so happens that that doesn't resolve the problem. So I'm not sure
That
where your
but that
disconnect is
isn't
on
my
this subject.
issue. Like in respecting someone, I understand it. I understand. Like I don't go around the world like disrespecting people because that's not the way it works. Right?
Okay.
Me as a man, I understand that if I go walk up to another man and talk shit, there's gonna be consequences.
Yeah.
Really, really
But
bad
you
consequences.
okay. So you understand the social consequences. I think the problem that you're running into then is this idea that you feel that you're being forced to accept something that you simply do not know very much about. Like you're
Not
rejecting the
that I don't
premise
know
of
much
trans.
about, that I don't want in my life, that I don't need in my
No,
life,
you
that I don't want
clearly
it
you
for my
clearly
family.
don't know much about it. You c- you clearly don't know much about it, and you've demonstrated that you don't know much about it. And the fact that you've just said this is icky, and you clearly don't want to learn much
There's a
about
lot
it,
of
tells
things
me
I
a
don't
lot
want
about
for my
your
life.
character as a person. And I'm curious, just tell me why don't you want it for your life? What is your reason that you're like, this is icky? I don't want this in my life.
Your life. For the same reason that you don't want Christianity in your life. It's none of nobody's business.
So I'm curious about where, like, if we're coming from a position, like, because we're in agreement that Christianity isn't true, but because we don't accept Christianity because there isn't evidence, right? But that's not the same thing and with trans people. And we keep trying to tell you there is evidence for trans people existing and for being a variation of normal. And the fact that you don't want to learn about it is not you taking a better and more skeptical position. The proper position, like as a skeptic, would be I'm going to read and learn about this thing that I don't know much about, and then I will make my decision based on the evidence. You haven't looked at all at the evidence,
I have.
and if
No,
you
I have.
did,
But
you have
this
to
is why I
change your
gave you the
position.
example. I know, because this is why I gave you the example. How would I know that if we get together, we can make babies?
I'm
I
done.
don't
I'm
want
done
you
with
to.
Okay, hold
him.
on.
Yeah,
I'm not dealing with you
no more
sexually
of that.
harassing my co-host. Goodbye.
Fucking freak. Hey, chat. Can we come up with a new slur? Because most of the slurs have problems, but I need a slur for Dennis. Calling him an idiot isn't enough. I need something more offensive. So go to work, chat.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think the only reason that he wasn't sexually harassing me is that he doesn't know that I'm assigned female. Like, yikes.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate that. It's not cool. Like the first
Yeah,
time
and
we can tell you
twice.
like this is uncool, but the second time is like, okay, bro, really deeply unacceptable way to speak to someone in any situation. So anyway,
Yeah, and
I'm
then
sorry that
claims
you had
and
to
then
deal with
claims
that.
that he wants to be respectful. No, you don't.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
I want to know what conversation happened in the screening that we came away with the idea that he was asking questions because he wanted to learn versus like coming into concern troll basically. Ugh,
Yeah.
yikes. Okay.
Hey there, Eric. Noting that anyone watching that clip makes atrociously poor life decisions, where should they send their protection money to prevent further damage?
All protection money should be sent to patreon.com/calltheline, or else we will break your kneecaps.
Okay, we can't say that. I think we
Oh,
can't
no
say
threats?
that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hit like and subscribe.